And I'm telling you, the media is going to pile on with Trump's a sore loser. But he didn't lose. We don't have any evidence he lost. He's a sore loser. It's time to move on. I think we are looking at an election 2020 election night potential nightmare here. If it is a close election, that's if it's close, which all indications seem to appear that this will be close between President Trump, obviously, and former Vice President Biden. What do I mean by that? The Democrats are pushing right now because of the coronavirus. They are pushing for mass mail-in balloting. As we know from mail-in balloting, as I've covered on this show before, President Trump is not wrong. He is absolutely spot on correct that mass mail-in ballot. I vote by mail. I don't have an objection to voting by mail, to be clear what my position is. I do have an objection to voting by mail if you don't have a legitimate reason, which I think is the same position of the Trump scenario. Of the Trump campaign. Nobody should be sent a ballot in the mail if they did not, in fact, request one because they have a reason. Are we all clear on that? Because the distinctions are always blurred by the left as they try and make us out to be the hypocrites they actually are. If you have a reason to vote by mail, military, you can't get to the ballot, you're sick, your daycare issues, whatever it may be, and you request a ballot by mail that is sent to your house and they can authenticate you by mail, I have no issue with that at all. I do it. Not all the time, but I do it sometimes when we vote. I have no problem with that. Ballots being sent to registered voters via mail who didn't request them is a horrible idea. The Democrats would love that. Those ballots are votes hanging out there in the ether that there's really very little means to authenticate them whatsoever. The potential for fraud is absurd. It's outrageous. It's off the charts. Don't take my word for it or President Trump's word for it, who's equally concerned about mail-in fraud. Just take the New York Times, an article we've now cited 3 times. This is a 2012 article in the New York Times by Adam Liptak. The New York Times. This isn't Bongino.com. Actually, it would be more reputable if it was at Bongino.com. But this is them talking about the dangers of mail-in voting. New York Times, 2012. Error and fraud at issue as absentee voting rises. Adam Liptak from inside the piece. Again, don't take it from me. Take it from the New York Times themselves, the issue they have with mail-in voting. Votes cast by mail are less likely to be counted, more likely to be compromised, and more likely to be contested, pay attention to that, than those cast in a voting booth, statistics show. This is the New York Times. Election officials reject almost 2% of ballots cast by mail, double the rate for in-person voting. Not me, the New York Times. The more people you force to vote by mail, Mr. Sancho said, who they're quoting in the piece, the more invalid ballots you will generate. Okay. Election experts say the challenges created by mail-in ballots could well affect outcomes this fall and beyond. Remember, this is from 2012. If the contests next month are close enough to be within what election lawyers call the margin of litigation, the grounds on which they will be fought will not be hanging chads, but ballots cast away from the voting booth. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2 key takeaways from that New York Times article and why I am seriously anxious about what's going to happen in 2020 are contested ballots, more likely to be contested via mail, meaning someone says, that doesn't look right. That's not the signature. That's not even the description of the voter. That wasn't sealed right. That wasn't signed correctly. They're more likely to be contested, and litigation is likely to result. Litigation, for the liberals listening, the legal process. Now, what does this have to do with 2020? Again, ladies and gentlemen, the Democrats are pushing for mass mail-in voting when we already know, because the statistics are crystal clear, that fraud is rampant, more so than in-person voting. And secondly, ballots are likely to be contested and sent through a long, arduous legal process. Long, arduous legal process. I thought the election was going to be decided on election night. Yeah, I thought that too. Shame on me. Now, in case you think, again, I'm by the way, I am citing left-wing rag resources for this, not because I think they're credible, the New York Times and the Washington Post, but simply because ideas I believe are credible, that mail-in voting leads to increased fraud. They have already cited in their articles, so they can't get away from it anymore, when it was probably of political advantage to them. Why they were writing that article back then, who knows? Maybe absentee ballots were favoring Republicans. There's always an agenda with the Times and others. Here's another left-wing rag, the Washington Post, talking about late night counting of ballots on election night 2020 coming right up. Only 130 something days away? Barring a landslide, what's probably not coming on November 3rd? Election day. A result in the race for the White House, Washington Post, by Amy Gardner. Folks, the Democrats are not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. Now, as I opened up the show, I said I was going to tie this to an experience that was had in Maryland by many who live there, including Joe. I was not there at the time of this election. But this is the Democrats' plan. You ready? You ready? The Democrats' plan is election night chaos, litigation, contested ballots, mail fraud, voter fraud, whatever fraud you need to get. Contest it long enough in the legal process, and then push for we've had enough. It's time to move on. Joe Biden won. Who said? Well, we said it's time to move on. That wouldn't happen. It did happen in Maryland. Joe remembers it well. Me having run for office in Maryland. This is a horror story. Joe, if I get anything wrong in this story, please correct me. But there was a wonderful woman who I adore to this day by the name of Ellen Sauerbrey. She ran for governor in Maryland. She won that race. She was a Republican, by the way, an important point. She won. Was it against Glendenning? I forget I think it was Glendenning, was it? I don't even know.
Yeah, it was Glendenning.
Yeah, I think it was Glendenning. Yeah. So she's running against Glendenning, who's a Democrat. Ellen Sauerbrey, in an election night upset, there's no question she wins this race. None. She wins, but then all of a sudden in Baltimore City, votes start coming in. There's allegations of voter fraud, tampering. And next thing you know, a seemingly insurmountable lead by Miss Sauerbrey, the Republican, turns into a lead for Glendenning, the Democrat. Now, at a minimum, listen, to this day, I believe she won that race handily, by the way. There were all kinds of stories and anecdotes about fraud coming out of Baltimore City, fraudulent ballots, and Ellen Sauerbrey fought it. What did the media? Of course, the media, they don't mind chaos. They don't mind the chaos at all. Only after about a week or so it wasn't even that long, Joe, a week or two, all of a sudden it started getting out there. It's time to move on. It's time to move on. Oh, it is? Okay, so you're willing to concede that Ellen Sauerbrey won. No. They started calling her, the media people, sour grapes. She won.
Right.
I'm not getting this wrong. She won this race. I'm telling you, she won this race. The fraud was rampant. And because she dared to complain about the fraud, the media piled on the Republican, not the Democrat, despite evidence everywhere she won, and said, it's time to move on. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, mark this show date, Tuesday, June 23rd. Mark it if I pray I'm wrong. But this will be a contested election. I think it will be, if it's close. If it's not close in either direction, it's not going to matter because of the Electoral College, of course. It's not a popular vote election. But if you have electoral chaos in 3 or 4 swing states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, whatever it may be, and this race hangs up in the air, you are going to see lawsuits out the wazoo. Nobody knows where the wazoo is, but the wazoo exists because everybody talks about a wazoo all the time. You are going to see lawsuits out of the fictional wazoo. And I'm telling you, the media is going to pile on with Trump's a sore loser. But he didn't lose. We don't have any evidence he lost. He's a sore loser. It's time to move on.
You just heard Dan Bongino.